Now, Linda, would you like to introduce our speaker?
So this is Anthony Vega. Actually, Mary already sent a good description of Anthony and his short bio. He's Chief of Staff at Lake County Sheriff's Office. And you can see it on the screen, so I don't think I need to repeat all this. He's done other forums for us, and we're very happy to have him here to discuss the data collection and transparency question, criminal justice coordinating councils, which we call community councils, and post-incarceration and sentence completion for the criminal justice update. So thank you very much, Anthony, for coming and agreeing to speak to all these issues, and you're on.
Okay.
Great. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure to be here. And before I begin, I definitely want to thank the League of Women Voters, Linda Bartmus, Mary Matthews, and Rosemary for inviting me. And you know, before I was Chief of Staff for the Sheriff, I worked with Rosemary and Mary Matthews in my prior life. So it's good to see them virtually. So I've been invited to address 3 specific topics. And like Linda mentioned, it's data collection and transparency, criminal justice coordinating councils, and successful reentry. So I did have some written remarks for the data collection and transparency component because it's very complex and very technical. So I wanted to make sure that I gave you all the information that you need. But I will be using the framework that was shared with me, which is a question: are efficient data collection, data sharing, and transparency critical in an impartial and unbiased criminal justice system? So the short answer is yes, absolutely. Data collection, the data sharing, and transparency is absolutely critical. Not only is it critical for local, state, and federal policy stakeholders, but it ensures that the criminal justice system is truly impartial and unbiased while creating a mechanism for jurisdictional accountability. In practice, however, the answer is much more complex. The roadmap to achieve thorough data collection and the sharing of that data has multiple points of barriers that need to be addressed before being fully implemented on a large scale. To attempt to answer the question, again, to the best of my ability, I will provide the current data collection and data sharing landscape. As it currently stands, jurisdictions across Illinois operate on different computer platforms that include different operating systems, different hardware, different software. Within each jurisdiction, computer platforms are also limited by age, compatibility with other internal and external systems, which affect the collection and aggregation of that data sharing. Furthermore, jurisdictional computer platforms vary by the scope of the criminal justice agency. Sheriff's computer platforms are vastly different than those for municipal law enforcement and vastly different from those of its judicial circuit. Additionally, the larger the agency, usually the more versatile, newer the computer platforms. Just as importantly, the higher the likelihood of proportional staff support. By contrast, the smaller the agency, the less versatile, the more outdated, and the likelihood of adequate staff support is much smaller. Each jurisdiction also handles cybersecurity measures very differently. While there's a common goal in ensuring law enforcement agencies are compliant with the FBI standard of criminal justice information systems, or CJIS, each jurisdiction is not uniform, which can be further exacerbated by agency culture. As a position overview stated, to enable systems to communicate with one another would be a major expenditure of time and money. Not only will there be an increased privacy issue associated with information not being sanitized properly, but there would be an increased risk in cybersecurity attacks. The increased interconnectivity, the more opportunity for increased risk of infiltration. As an example, let's say the color counties establish connectivity among each of the sheriff's office for the purposes of data collection and data sharing. Systems talk to one another, data is exchanged, aggregated, and reported. If Will County Sheriff's Office experiences a successful cybersecurity attack, then the attack has not only exposed all of the data, but it also has exposed every other color county to system infiltration. Apart from the current state of variable computer platforms, jurisdictions from across the state are already mandated to report certain information that is critical to policy stakeholders from all levels. Law enforcement traffic stop data is collected, analyzed, and published on an annual basis by the Illinois Department of Transportation. Law enforcement uniform crime reporting is sent to the state and federal government. This UCR data is available from jurisdictions' own public reporting or from the Illinois Criminal Justice Information Authority, which houses data going back to 1982, in addition to other excellent resources to look at specific crime trends across the state. The Illinois State Commission on Criminal Justice and Sentencing Reform has opined and called for improvement and expansion on data collection, integration, and sharing. They point to Illinois being a national leader in information technology expenditures, but lags behind in ensuring information is shared quickly and effectively among agencies across the state and local jurisdictions. Even when the data is shared, the use of different platforms of technology can frustrate efforts to provide a single source of information. They insist, the commission I mean, that data should be gathered and entered once and then made available to those who need it. The current status quo means that policymakers, researchers, and other actors within the criminal justice system frequently do not have access to the information they need to make informed decisions. The commission makes a significant recommendation of creating the Illinois Data Exchange Coordinating Council that would establish the platform, authority, and accountability that will allow the creation of a statewide information sharing environment, while also recognizing the importance of collecting and reporting data on race and ethnicity at every point in the justice system to allow for a systemic assessment of disproportionate minority impact. In summary, there are varying degrees of computer platforms being used across jurisdictions, while information is currently being collected, but the dissemination of that information is completely fragmented. So where do we go from here? Well, there are significant concerns over cybersecurity. We do not have to recreate the wheel. Before we can begin to talk about a statewide data exchange coordinating council, we have to start locally. Each jurisdiction has to do the following. They have to commit to the data collection and data sharing. 2, once that's done, the appropriating bodies must also commit to targeted investments to ensure adequate information technology infrastructure. While the commission pointed out that Illinois leads in IT expenditures, I would anecdotally bet that most of those expenditures are on maintenance costs, external consulting services, which in the long run is much more expensive than targeted investments in technology upgrades. It is also much more expensive to maintain old computer platforms. And 3, each jurisdiction must commit to tracking race and ethnicity to be able to identify disparities. Once that's done, and once there's a commitment on the local level, jurisdictions can begin to share at a larger level. While the commission recommended a statewide data exchange coordinating council, I believe this needs to happen at a regional level first. One area that has not been discussed is how geography impacts justice trends. It may be more beneficial for jurisdictions to have regional data to inform local decisions. Geography, the Chicago, Cook County is vastly different than the surrounding suburbs, similar but different. And the whole Collier County region is vastly different than Southern Illinois. So geography also plays an important role here, urban versus rural, suburban versus urban. It is also much more manageable to set up data reporting at a regional level to ensure adequate attention is paid to cybersecurity. It is my opinion, and not necessarily the opinion of the Sheriff's Office, that data exchanges need to be interconnected, Rather, layers of security can be added to ensure there is no unnecessary exposed vulnerabilities. So each regional data exchange should use the current what data is currently exists and apply it on a regional basis while looking for further data that needs to be collected and aggregated and reported. You know, so as I close on this topic, I do want to relay a story, at least from Lake County, from our administration. Within the first 30 days of Sheriff Idleburg being sworn in as sheriff, we met with the Coalition to Reduce Recidivism. And Township Supervisor Jones, a few of her staff, and I believe Holly Kerr, who's in this forum, attended. And one of the points that they wanted us to hear is, we don't know who is housed in the jail. We don't know, we don't have that information. We are the Coalition to Reduce Recidivism. We are a partner. We provide services for those that are re-entering society or coming back from the Department of Corrections. How can we, as a social service organization, really know what to focus on within our efforts if we don't have the data? And one of the staffers also pointed out to is, we shouldn't have to FOIA that information either. When we started, any person who wanted demographic information of the jail had to submit a Freedom of Information Act request, which also takes time from the staffer that's assigned to the FOIAs, time for the collection of that data, time in the response back and forth between the individual or the organization and our staff. So, we took that to heart, and this is why data sharing is important. The data collected is not just useful for the policy stakeholders, whether it's the county board or the state legislature, or the governor, or even our federal representatives. It's very important for the social service organizations that are underground doing the work. They can work from national statistics as to what is needed, but to best support those that are in need of help, those entering society from the jail or prison, we need localized information. That's how good decisions will have greater impact. And so one of the things that we announced last year is, we published our jail demographic information going back from 2013. If you go to our website, you'll see that we have, it's called our jail population dashboard. You can go there. You'll see how many jail admissions we've had over time since 2013. You'll see the breakdown of gender, breakdown of age, breakdown of race and ethnicity. And from those jail admissions, also the breakdown of what are the top offenses that are resulting in jail admissions. You'll also see how many individuals who were admitted to our jail spent more than 3 days in our jail. Now, 3 days is a best practice metric. If a person is detained in the jail for more than 3 days, that's when we start seeing an impact in their life. That means loss of job. That means housing becomes in question. If they are a sole provider to their family, then you'll see that family nucleus being severely impacted. So that the longer they stay, the greater the impact. But the 3 days is the minimum, is the metric that we use as a starting point. So, if you go into that jail dashboard, you'll see that it's current up to, I believe, November of 2019. Now, we didn't do that. We don't have the staff or capacity to update that dashboard, which leads into one of the points that I relate to all of you. Loyola University actually is the one that created that dashboard. They have all of our data up to the end of the quarter that ended at the end of October to update that dashboard for this year. Now, what's going to be different moving forward is we're also going to have information on our dashboard on jail releases. Who is being released? That's something that's going to be very interesting to see. Is if we have, a large percentage for jail admissions. Generally, I believe we had about 30% white, 35% African American, and 20% Latino of jail admissions. Now, you looked at comparatively to the population of the county, that's vastly different. You still have, I believe, the white population is about 30%, but the African American population, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it's about 17% in Lake County. For Hispanic or Latino, it's at 12%. So you're already seeing disparities in who's admitted into the jail from that information. So now we need to take a deeper dive. So the challenge that I pointed out to in terms of maybe the computer platform not being up to date is a barrier. We want to share information locally, at least the Lake County Sheriff's Office does. But we also need targeted investments in our IT infrastructure to be able to do that. So we've been very lucky with Loyola University.
No, his voice keeps going.
Going through the data, presenting it in a visual format for the public, and they're going to be adding more to it. But they're also a university, so the turnaround is taking a while. I gave them that. So as soon as the quarter ended, I think a few days after that, they had all of the data. And we're now in November 18th, and I still don't have it. It is not updated. But that's just, again, there's a lot of data. It does take staff, and they have a whole team of data scientists that are going through that data and making it presentable. So we are one of a decent sized sheriff's office. So what is the impact if this is what we're trying to do? Can you imagine a smaller agency trying to do this, or a smaller sheriff's office? So this is, it is a work in progress. I do definitely think that data collection and data sharing is essential. But I also think each jurisdiction needs to have a commitment to its community to be able to see, even if they can't have versatile data to be reported, that there's a lot of data already out there, and they have a responsibility to share it, whether it's on their website, or they can easily direct people to agencies that
Anthony, your
Yes.
voice is going in and out a little bit. I don't know if it's in your mic. When you keep talking, we'll tell you that it's soft. Okay.
Okay, so
There.
I think this is why I saw a few heads shaking left and no. I thought they were disagreeing with my statements, but it's no, you can't hear me. So I do apologize for that. I'll project a little bit more. So, I do certainly think that, for anybody here that's interested in, justice trends or more data, the ICJA, Illinois Criminal Justice Information Authority, is almost the de facto statewide data exchange coordinating council now. They have a lot of data, and most people don't know about it. It's an excellent resource. So that, that's what I mean, that we don't have to recreate the wheel. There are certain layers that already exist and could be further utilized. So I know there's a lot of questions, but I also have two other topics to cover. So I'm going to jump now to the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, and then hopefully the questions will address any of the leftover questions. So the question on Criminal Justice Coordinating Councils is should Criminal Justice Coordinating Councils, or CJCCs, be created throughout the state? And I just want to read the pro position on here, because I think it's very, very important. Most states, including Illinois, operate criminal justice systems at the county level and with little coordination between them. Illinois' 102 counties and 24 judicial circuits have unique issues and needs with varying resources and support. Each department of the criminal justice system, from police to parole, is individually funded with impact and success defined within each narrow scope of each organization. CJCCs offer a way for these agencies to collaboratively address county criminal justice issues. All justice is local, including elected mayors, community boards, and sheriffs. Communities do not want increased mandates from the state that are not funded, and the local community cannot pay for it. CJCCs are essentially critical to bring government stakeholders together, social service organizations together, community members together. In 2017, a CJA, which I mentioned from the data component, awarded 5 counties, Lake, McHenry, McLean, Winnebago, and St. Clair counties, technical assistance grants to establish CJCCs. So in Lake County, we've had a CJCC. It started in 2017 and actually had a pseudo CJCC prior to that. But those CJCCs were focused internally. The only people invited to those meetings were government stakeholders or high-level state agency stakeholders. You know, in 2018 and 2017, all these meetings were behind closed doors. That's not how a CJCC should work. When Sheriff Idleburg came on board, you know, we shifted and we essentially started from scratch with his criminal justice. It's a coordinating council, but the acronym that we use is the Criminal Justice Community Council, where we brought not only government stakeholders, so you have state's attorney, the 19 judicial circuits, you know, county board chair, Mayor Rockingham, who represents all the mayors, but also brought social service organizations, you know, Coalition to Reduce Recidivism, the townships, Mano a Mano. You have all these stakeholders that are actively working in the community, but we also brought community members themselves, people that were impacted by the criminal justice system. The CJCCs are a way to bridge the gap. It is the visual that I use to my staff who question, why do we need the CJCC? We do a lot of good work. So does the 19th Judicial Circuit. So does the public defender. But the issue is we have too many silos in government. If we have silos within government, we have much bigger silos in the community. There are resources that community members do not know exist, or that they want that the justice system to enact. Well, we already have a form of some of these things, but it's incumbent upon the government agencies and the criminal justice agencies to do the legwork and let the community know. The CJCC, the visual that I use to my staff who question that is this, you know, the CJCC, if you look at, you know, the visual, the CJCC is the megaphone. It is amplifying all of these voices and providing a way to let everyone know what is happening across the county, across different layers, from the community level to the county level. In, I believe it was 2019, we did have our first meeting of the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council. Due to COVID, you know, there were a couple meetings that had to be canceled. We didn't know the impact of COVID. I don't think anybody really grasped what it would mean. And so now we're starting back up. So we're picking up that momentum. And so, you know, so we also have, apart from the council coming together on a quarterly basis, we establish committees. We have the data committee. What data does a community want from the criminal justice system? Holly Kerr, who's one of the participants of this call, she's our chair. I just had a conversation yesterday with her, and Holly, I hope it's okay if I share this. You know, we want to reduce the jail population, right? We know we have an over-incarceration problem in the country. So COVID provided an opportunity for many jurisdictions to reduce the jail population. Lake County was no different. We were at our lowest point of 434 inmates in over a decade. That's what we accomplished. And so now the question is, what happened to those individuals that were released? We knew they were not a threat to public safety. We knew that their flight risk was relatively low, but what happened? And that's the information that we're trying to get. And so, Holly and I had a good conversation is what can we, knowing that we have limited resources, limited staff power, what is available for us to really look and analyze and bring forward to the council for their consideration? And so that leads to the question of 5B is, should CJCCs include a wide representation from local justice system, government bodies, service providers, and the communities? Absolutely. The Lake County Association of Chiefs of Police is also a member of our CJCC. We know that in Lake County, there are over 40 different law enforcement agencies. It is a lot for a county. We know that each one has a different philosophy, methodology in addressing certain issues, but their voice is also important at the table. And so if there are issues that, the community members bring at the CJCC that we, as a sheriff's office, cannot address, we can at least point them in the right direction. Or if at that meeting we have the chief of the chiefs of police, they can answer that question. So CJCCs are crucial. I wish there were more of them across the state. But CJCCs can also be actively undermined by jurisdictions that are not really committed to bridging the gap. And I don't say this lightly, but look at the way that the CJCC worked prior in Lake County. We've always had a CJCC off and on for periods of years, but they were all internally facing. You cannot create accountability. You cannot be transparent if you're meeting behind closed doors. And I believe there was another question on CJCCs, is on incentives and support be provided. And the answer is yes. So one of the best criminal justice coordinating councils is actually in Oregon. I forget the county that, I forget the county, but I can get that to you. It took them 5 years to establish their current model. Their current model is self-sustaining. They have staff. It's almost become their own independent county office for that area. And they started, it was also internal, and they started with the sheriff, the chief judge, the state attorney, the county chair, meeting Friday mornings at 7:30 in the morning. And then they hired a community engagement, a part-time, I believe, community engagement to slowly bring in the community and making it more open and transparent. And they got so big that they were able to raise money. They were able to raise money to pay for staff, to be liaisons to different communities, to also compensate community members for their time. There's a narrative that sometimes is not discussed enough, is we want, there's not a trend, but a need, right, of having impacted people be part of the solution, of having community members be part of the solution. Me being at the same table as the table that I sit in every day, that the sheriff sits in every day. But what we don't talk about is when we do that, is we're asking those impacted people and those community members to relive their trauma for our expense, right, for our progress. And so CJCCs have been discussing nationwide, how can we best compensate those impacted people? Is it a stipend? Is it, if there's child issues, paying for childcare during these very important meetings? So we do have, we have a good foundation, but there's more to, there's more progress that we need to make. And I think every jurisdiction, not only Illinois, but across the country, we're struggling with, we want impacted people to be part of the solution, but how can we do it in a way that doesn't delay their recovery, their healing, and doesn't bring back trauma back up. So for more information on our criminal justice coordinating council, I believe my email can be shared. I'll be more than happy. Our meetings are open. So even if you're not a member and you want to sit in on a full council meeting, you're more than welcome to. We expect more data to be forthcoming over the next year. And something that we're also working on is those targeted key investments in our IT infrastructure to be able to have a versatile system and can get us more data on a more timely basis. And so that leads to the last topic, which is post-incarceration and sentence completion, from recidivism to successful reentry.
You're going out again. We lost you again. I think when you turn your mouth away from that side piece, that might be part of it.
Apologies, I'll move my paper here. Should all unnecessary barriers encountered by people with criminal records which hinder their successful return to society after completion of sentences be removed? And then the second question is, should people with criminal records have access to the same income-based support opportunities and services that are available to others in society and for which they would otherwise qualify? So that's a very loaded, it's a very complex question. Working at the sheriff's office in working on complete overhauling the inmate programming and reentry department of our jail has, there's a lot of different stories of people that always stick with me, that I always that are in the forefront of when there's a new initiative or when I have questions like these. We do have, part of what our Cjcc is working on is also on reform. We have a reform committee. And one of the items that we're also actively discussing is the Illinois Pretrial Justice and Fairness Act, which is pretrial justice reform, essentially eliminating cash bail. There are a lot of people in our jail that are simply there because they cannot afford to bond out. I have one story. I have one individual, it was last Christmas, who was in our jail for 45 days because he stole a $10 rotisserie chicken from Jewel. That cost what, $10? Bond is $500 or $1,000. Why is he here? He's not violent. We already know he can't afford, because if he had to steal food, we know there's an income problem. He shouldn't be here. Jail is not meant to be overly punitive. Jail is not meant for, to take up the place of other social services that have been historically cut across the country. We've looked at over a period of time where, mental health services were cut across the country, right? Usually the arts, social services, those are cut when jurisdictions are faced with budgetary restrictions. But nobody thought about the consequences of those decisions. Who's going to fill the void? It's law enforcement. Jails. There are, at any given time in our jail, 40% of our jail population is in some sort of psychotropic medication. Most of them, I would, anecdotally, are not violent either. But because they don't have this access to mental health services, they turn to drugs for self-medication, which leads to other issues. And a high percentage of those on psychotropic medication usually have the co-occurring disorder, which is usually drug abuse for self-medication. But our jails were never meant to be de facto mental health facilities. Our staff are not equipped to deal with mental illness to that high degree. So what can we do? So when they leave, or if they're able to pay bond, or they serve the county sentence. So for those that don't know, you can be sentenced to the county for 364 days or less. Anything over 364 days, you have to get to the Department of Corrections. So once they serve their sentence, or there's a plea deal and they're released, that record, we're not setting them up for success. We're not setting them up for successful reentry because we're not preparing them. We are not, the resources are not there on the outside to, for us to be able to hand them off, make sure that they complete their program, and make sure we steer them away from possible criminal activity. Instead, we've had cases where they're released and they are, within 30, 60 days, they're back in jail. That individual who stole the rotisserie chicken, the reason his bond was so high was because not even a year before that, he committed a similar crime. So based on that history, whoever made a decision, the judiciary said, no, you're going to have this bond amount, and you're going to be remanded to the jail until you're able to pay that. So it's a vicious cycle. And so that's why, the Chair Hart, State Attorney Nierheim, and Sheriff Idleburg, and a variety of other stakeholders have worked really hard to try and make the crisis center a reality. The crisis center would provide a way for us to, whether it's through our own law enforcement interaction or through education, letting people know this is a 24-hour facility that can be used as a resource, not only for the individuals experiencing mental health illness or co-occurring disorders or any other issue, is they can use that. Lake County is very different. Lake County, compared to Cook County or a lot of other jurisdictions that have a much more versatile care system, if you will, have county-run, healthcare system. Cook County does. We don't. We have private. Most of our hospitals here are privately run, with the exception of one or two. That leads to more fragmentation of services and lack of resources, lack of coordination, which then is a big barrier to a successful reentry. And at least for us, at least at the Sheriff's Office, we know that sometimes the average length of stay in our jail is about 30 to 45 days. So that is really a small amount of time to be able to adequately assess every inmate, to connect them to resources while they're still here, and to then ensure a warm handoff. That's why we need those resources out in the community. So one of the things that we instituted when as part of that overhaul that I mentioned is we work with the health department, and they come in, and so they get a list. All right, these are the people that we know they're going to be released within the next 2 to 3 weeks. So they start enrolling them in Medicare, so that when they leave, it's kicked on, and they can go to the health department, to other resources, so they can have a better opportunity to connect to treatment, whether it's for mental health or substance abuse or for other issues. But it's also, successful reentry is also about making them active citizens of society. It's not just about putting people away and forgetting that they exist until they come out. It's by having them actively engaged. This is why voting in jails is very important. This year, well, in the last General Assembly, there was a bill that made voting in jails law. Cook County had a program with their clerk's office for years. Lake County had a program with the clerk's office here for years prior to it being law. And there was voter registration. So what we did this year as part of that, we had over 50 inmates register to vote for the first time. We had 91 inmates vote during the general 2020 election. Historically, the Lake County Jail has only averaged about 20 voter registrations or 20 actual votes casting their ballots. But we were very intentional about making sure that we talked to the housing units, let them know about this. It's also another reason, you know, in addition to the voting, is also about making sure that the decisions are made on the outside that impact them, that they receive. So we all know about the $1,200 stimulus from the federal government as a way to combat COVID. In September, what I forget which uh, which court, but they ruled that inmates in county jail facilities and Department of Correction facilities across the country are eligible for $1,200 of that stimulus. There was no legal mandate for us to facilitate any of that. We were not required to let them know, but we did. We worked with 150 of our inmates and we helped them fill out the forms and we sent them overnight to the IRS office in California so they could get also their stimulus money. That $1,200 could help them bond out. Those $1,200 could help their families. They can be productive even while incarcerated. So it's the, you know, and I think I might have gone off a tangent here, but you know, it's almost like a carousel of different issues that impact a successful reentry. You know, you address one and then you know, there's another one that you have to immediately address. And so we worked very hard to professionalize our reentry department, to making sure that they, you know, it's not just about education in the jail. It's not about, you know, making sure they continue to be very, those take time, but it's also what do they need? We've worked with with the Secretary of State on getting actual videos for those individuals that need to have their license reinstated. You know, all of our inmates have access to tablets in the jail. So we upload those videos to each tablet. They can study for their license reinstatement. If they never had a license, they can study for, you know, for the driver's exam. We are working with the Social Security office. You know, it's something so simple as copy of your ID, copy of your Social Security card that you need for services that a lot of our inmates do not have. So a lot of our time is, you know, is spent on working with the Social Security Administration and Secretary of State and getting the adequate paperwork to our inmates so they can have that. If they don't have that, they're not going to be successful in reentry. And if they're not successful in reentry, if they don't have those tools, then the education in the jail, we had a certification for for restaurant work. That's not going to help. You know, people need to verify employers require an ID and a Social Security card. So there's multiple points, and it's unfortunately sometimes very difficult to have a straight answer because I can go in many different directions, and I hope I didn't confuse all of you even more. Rather, it's almost a carousel. But we also understand there are unnecessary barriers that that need to be addressed. You know, housing, for example, to get housing assistance. If you have a criminal record, I believe it's a certain level of misdemeanors and felonies on your record, you can get it. You can get housing, even though you might. And that's a huge barrier. We have a big homeless population all across the Chicagoland area. So there needs to be a realization that policies that were initially instituted in the name of public safety, that they need to be readdressed. And we need to look long and hard at how those decisions detrimentally impact vulnerable populations, communities of color, and really work to readdress them. I do believe that most people with criminal records should have access to the same income-based support opportunities and services that are available to others. There are other mechanisms for accountability that can be instituted. It should not just be an immediate disqualifier. Recovery and successful reentry is not a one and done. It is a long journey. You know, we have a peer recovery specialist who works with the jail. She's been in recovery for 10 years and she doesn't say, hey, I'm cured. No, this is ongoing. As I'm helping the inmates, I'm also helping myself. So, you know, I also think, you know, having, you know, government agencies like the Sheriff's Office or state attorneys or even judicial circuits also need to look at the impacted people like our peer recovery and say, hey, we need more people like that in government, in these offices that make these decisions, because they know what are the best services. They know what the best tools are that people exiting prison or the jail need. We can look to them, but they also need to be in the driver's seat. So I believe I've spoken for about 45 minutes. I know there are plenty of different questions. I hope I addressed all of the topics that were part of your consensus questionnaire adequately. And I can take, are the questions going to be in the chat or are they going to be verbal?
You know what? I'm going to read them from the chat, Anthony, and
Okay.
and we'll do it that way. And let me just, Linda, I'm going to ask Linda unmute. Linda is one of the co-chairs of our Criminal Justice Study Committee, and Judy Armstrong is the other, and she left the call, I think. So Linda's there. Here's some of the questions we have. So the first one was, and again, I was busy trying to backtrack on some of my Zoom mistakes. And so I'm not sure if these questions were all covered. I'm sorry. So from Mary Pike wants to know, do we know how many are in jail due to inability to post bail?
So the general metric is whoever's in pretrial detention in the jail are there simply because they cannot afford bond. Because if they could afford bond, they wouldn't be sitting there. Nobody's sitting there because they want to. So as of today, we have about 460 inmates in pretrial detention. That is actually the lowest it's ever been. Usual population, so generally our jail has a capacity of 740 inmates. Usually around this time, actually, usually at any given time during the year, we're usually at over 600 or over 550. Luckily, we've maintained a lower population, so it needs to be lower, but currently we have 460 inmates on pretrial status. I would bet that maybe 10% of them had their bond revoked. So again, violent crime. So 10% of that. So you have about 400 who would be there because their inability to post bail.
Okay, thank you. Lori Rose wants to know, why isn't Lake County maintaining the dashboard? Is it funding or some other reason? It's
funding and staffing challenges. The jail dashboard, you got to get the raw data and you have to, again, sanitize it, clean it, get the identifiers out, and then play around with how you're going to display it until you get to a good point. The goal is that after this update with Loyola University, then Loyola University is working on automating the code that pulls the data and rearranges it. So our staff can then moving in the first quarter of 2020.
We lost the last sentence again. There must be something with your mic.
Sorry, I think I did move a little bit, so apologies. The goal is for the first quarter 2021 to have our staff actually update the dashboard automatically with the automated code sequences. That's very technical, but it's the computer people, wizards, they're coming up with the spells to make that more automatic, but generally it was funding and staffing challenges.
Okay, thank you. And then Kelly McShane wants to know, who provides pre-release evaluations? Is it social workers, guards, attorneys?
So I'm only going to speak about what we do as the Lake County Sheriff's Office. There may be other screening tools that maybe defense attorneys could employ, but for us, we do have our reentry specialist that works with our inmates as they're as they're about to leave, to making sure they have the adequate resources, including even if it's just a sheet of paper with the different resources, but they do an initial assessment anyway. Like, hey, this person needs social security card. They need contact with the Secretary of State for an ID card, or, oh, this person definitely needs insurance, so we need to get the health department when they come in next and sign them up for Medicare. So it's our reentry specialist. Obviously, they're part of specialty course. There are different components to that other agencies handle, but generally, for us is we have our reentry specialist.
Okay, thank you. And then Martha Weiss would like to know, are there charities in Lake County who help with posting bail for those who can't afford bail?
I'm not aware of any Lake County specific charity. I know the Chicago Coalition to End Money Bond, they have gone outside of Cook County to post bail to different jails. I believe they've gone to Winnebago, they've gone to other counties. They haven't come here yet. I do expect that, obviously to change with time as they're also growing in terms of capacity and staff. So I expect them to eventually come here, and we work very well with them.
Okay, thank you. Just so you know, we posted this meeting onto the Criminal Justice Google group for the Lake County, for the Illinois State League. So we have quite a few visitors from other communities. And one of them is Carol Davies, and she's from the Greater Rockford Criminal Justice Committee. And she's wondering, even though this is another one of our topics, which is restorative justice, she's wondering if criminal justice coordinating councils and/or post-incarceration reentry programs are considered to be aspects of restorative justice. So without going too much, because that's another topic for another day, but if you can connect those two.
Certainly, I think there's quite a argument there. I mean, a big part of the Cjcc is to get rid of the silos and connect us directly to those community members that are actively working on restorative issues, but also have been impacted. So there's definitely an argument that can be made to that. Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And then Bill Cal is also from another area. He's from the Greater Kane area, from the Kane County area. And he asks, you mentioned that Cjcc is self-funding. How do they do that? Where does the funding come from?
A big shout out to Kane County. Their Sheriff Hain from Kane has also won against a long-term incumbent, and he's doing a lot of great things in Kane County. So I have the utmost respect to Sheriff Hain. He actually does have a podcast, not to give him a shout out, this much of advertising, but he does have a podcast where he sits down with an inmate and they talk about their stories. So if you want to look that up, you can. But yes, so the Cjcc that I mentioned as self-funding is in the state of Oregon. And it took them, I believe, 5 or more years to get to that point where they could self-fund. But it was a lot of initial fundraising from organizations that are looking at, again, restorative justice, criminal justice reform, that got funded. In Lake County, the Cjcc is part of our Safety and Justice Challenge initiative that is funded by the MacArthur Foundation. So some of the support for the Cjcc comes from the MacArthur
Foundation. From the MacArthur Foundation. Okay, yeah, we lost that word again. So there's something with that. Like, I have one. I know in Lake County that between the sheriff and the state's attorney and the Lake County Health Department, they're working on diversion programs. How does that tie in with the coordinating committee or the sheriff's office? Yeah.
So when I mentioned the crisis center, that is part of the diversion programming. Once the crisis center comes to fruition, then the data in the amplification of that resource will be funneled through the Cjcc. So the idea is using the crisis center as a diversion tool from jail. So law enforcement would have this resource instead of saying, hey, you seem to be going through a mental health crisis or substance abuse crisis. right now, as it stands, there are only two options: ER or jail. The crisis center would be the third option. The idea is to funnel people away from jail to the crisis center, where they can get the help from those that are professionally trained to deal with that aspect. Now, they have to go to the ER because they're, maybe they're they need medical help. That would be a different issue, but the crisis center would be a part of the diversion programming.
Okay, I do not see any other questions in the box. Linda, shall I turn it over to you to, oh, I see one, wait a minute, a late question. Oh, I see, it's something about the league. All right, Gail, I'll get back to you in a minute. Linda, I'll turn it over to you to tie up and finish up the program.
Well, that was great, Anthony. A lot of information. And we're all going to probably have to watch the recording to get it all down. But it sounds like you're doing a lot of work and working with a lot of groups to try to make things better. And if nobody else has any more questions,
Okay,
we can
we can turn off the recording. All right.
Do you have anything to add?
Oh, Anthony, yeah, any last words, Anthony?
Well, I just want to say thank you. I hope this was not overwhelming. There's a lot of different points, layers, you name it, in these issues, but they're very important issues that need to be addressed. So please, I always say this, and sometimes that just means I have my free time becomes shorter and shorter. Please use me as a resource, use the Sheriff's Office as a resource. If you have further questions or issues that you may have about specific initiatives or topics, please use us as a resource. We're actively engaged with the legislature on reform. So, please, we're here not only to provide our statutorily mandated services, but we're here to be an active community partner. So please see us as a partner. So again, thank you for the invitation and thank you for your hour of your afternoon.
Oh,
Thank you very much. You are a wealth of information.
indeed, thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. And let's see, I don't want to do, let's see, I'm gonna, oh, I know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna share the screen. And then, there we go. And then I'm gonna stop the recording in a minute and we will figure out where to post it and we will send an email to the registrants about where it'll be posted. It might be on, I don't know, we'll let you know. All right, I'm going to stop the recording. Let's see if I can do that. Stop recording. All right, there we go. All right, so at this time, if you would like to, I'm going to, let's see if I can, I'm going to unmute everybody. Let's see. Oh, can I do that? No, but I'll give you permission to unmute yourselves. Those of you who are visiting us, if you would like to, oh, and I thought I stopped the recording. Stop the recording.